2020 changed us all, and among the sectors most drastically impacted by this fakakta year was the international film industry. Release schedules postponed indefinitely, theaters completely shut down and on the verge of bankruptcy, a vicious debate over the possibility of same-day streaming release. Cinema will be experiencing the reverberations of the coronavirus and its resulting economic shutdown for some time to come. In fact, things may never be the same. But while film was down in 2020, it was not out. There was still some good movies to be released, one way or another, this past year. And for this edition of the Great Pop Culture Debate, we will be discussing the best of 2020 film. If you want to see what happened between me, Borat, and Rudy Giuliani in a hotel room, you'll need to subscribe to my OnlyFans. I'm your host, Eric Rezsnyak. I'm joined by my panel. Forget theme parks. She would like to join the class action suit against 2020 itself. Please welcome back Karissa Kloss.
It's very true. 2020 has been a ride worthy of Action Park.
It really has. He may not be the first cow, but he'll forever be a full-blown pig. It's Kevin Dillon.
Oink oink, bitches.
And no longer promising, no longer young, I'll defer to him on the woman. It's Matt DeTurck.
Hey, everybody.
Hey everybody. Our best of 2020 episodes will be a little bit different than our usual format. There's no polls, there's no brackets, there's barely even any debating. Our panelists are just going to do a pop culture show and tell on our individual top fives of the year. Do you disagree with some of our picks? Do you want to add some of your own to the discussion? Head to greatpopculturedebate.com and leave a comment on this episode, or find us on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook and tell us what you think. With that out of the way, we're going to get right into the top fives. I am alphabetically first in this group, so I will start. I'm going to make the same disclaimer I made in our warm-up, which you can find on Patreon if you're a subscriber. For me, best of film for 2020 is kind of a misnomer. For me, it was, here are a bunch of films that I liked that were released in 2020. I watched a lot of movies this year, a lot, as I think many people did, but very few of them came out in 2020. While the music and TV episodes, I was dealing with an embarrassment of riches in those sectors. For me, 2020 film, as I think everyone on this can agree, was a much smaller field of new entries, right? So when I say best of, I'm saying the ones that I enjoyed the most. I'm not saying that they are peerless or of an incredible critical quality. I'm talking about the ones that I enjoyed the most. And my first one is Onward, which is released by Disney Pixar and is available on Disney+. So I know many of the people on this panel are eagerly awaiting Soul, which will be released, I think, next week, 2 weeks from now on the platform.
Yeah,
We're recording this like the second weekend of December. Onward is my Pixar film of the year. It was released in theaters like immediately before the pandemic hit, and then Disney made the bold move to put it out on Disney Plus for free just a few weeks later, once everything shut down. I play Dungeons and Dragons, I have brothers, and I have daddy issues. So for me, this movie was a triple threat. It was very relevant to my interests. I think it's a beautiful film. I love the animation style. I think the fantasy mixed with kind of a high school idea is something I haven't seen a ton of in the past. So I thought the concept was very cute. Great voice cast with Tom Holland, Chris Pratt, Octavia Spencer. And honestly, I did not even realize it was Julia Louis-Dreyfus as their mother for the entire film. Like, I could not place her voice. It's very strange to me. The thing I felt about Onward, and again, I'm not saying it is the best Pixar movie. I'm not saying it's incredible, but for me, I thought it was really sweet and very thoughtful and had some great action sequences. But more than that, there's not a ton of films that explore the relationship between brothers in animation. We get a lot of sisters. We get a lot of the female heroines kind of doing self-discovery. And correct me if I'm wrong here, but if you're looking specifically at Disney movies, it's way more weighted to women than it is to men. I can think of Big Hero 6 as another example of this type of a film, but I appreciated that this was out there, again, as someone who has brothers and also was very interested in fantasy and D&D. In fact, I play D&D with one of my brothers every week. It really hit me, and I thought it was really lovely, and I do think I actually teared up a little bit towards the end. So that is my number 5 pick, and I'm going to throw it over to Karissa for hers.
Okay, so are we starting at the bottom of the
Start
list?
with your like number 5, and we're gonna work
Oh
our way up.
man. Okay. Well, I'm just going to say yeah, my number 5 is probably Dick Johnson is Dead, which is a documentary on Netflix. And it's about a woman who is a filmmaker and her aging father who is on his own and has recently been diagnosed with something. I forget. It might just be dementia. And so as a way to try and cope with his impending death as well as like her feelings about it, because she's very close with him, uh, she decides to make a documentary filming him dying all the ways he could die. They move him to New York, and one of the ways she imagines is an air conditioner falling out of a window. So they stage this, and she has like a little crew, and he participates in this stuff for her. And through this kind of like weirdly dark way of processing the inevitable, she kind of works through her feelings about it and gives us the insight on her relationship with her father. And he's just such a wonderful person, and it's such a sad and funny and like heartbreaking but just ultimately like warming film. And one of the things that we were kind of bandying about, regarding just like things to talk about this year, was best performance. And I said in our group chat, like, my best performance of the year would be Dick Johnson, because he's so willing to do everything she asks him to. And you can tell at some point he doesn't get it sometimes, but sometimes he really gets it. And I just really loved this film.
Yeah,
And I think I was gonna say, Kevin, you saw it, right?
I love this movie. I'm a big fan of Kirsten Johnson's. Her documentary Camera Person is probably easily in my top 5 favorite documentaries of all time. That's about her experience with her mother, but it also intercuts different types of stories. She's done 2 different documentaries about losing her family, and I I did travel on an Amtrak once. Don't judge me, people. I wore a mask, I promise. And I decided to watch this on my Amtrak train ride home, and I literally sobbed for
Yeah.
like most of it. I think this movie it really deals with. I had a grandmother who had dementia, and
Hmm.
the connection is there, and the loss. She was definitely like a parent in many ways to me, and
Hmm.
I think this film deals with empathy in such a beautiful way. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
it's
I think
so
it has. I was going to say, I think it has the best ending of anything I saw this whole
yes,
year.
Yeah, I was
yes,
gonna agree. I was gonna say this has the best final shot of anything this year.
Best.
Like, yeah.
And one of the things that he does, like they move him. Part of the film's journey is they move him from his home to it's like her apartment, I think, which is like
her apartment. Yep,
in New York City. And so as a going away, they throw him a funeral. So
yep.
he lives his own funeral, and his best friend gives like the most ridiculous and lovely and wonderful speech, and everybody's just sobbing, and it's just like the best send off and the most wonderful there's so many wonderful moments in this film. Like, if you have a parent, you have to see it.
It sounds incredible. So thank you, Krista, because I'd never heard of it before we started talking about this. So thank you very much for bringing that to my radar.
Yeah.
Kevin, I'm going to pass it to you. What's your 5th movie to be talking about?
Okay, so I realized this as we were starting to record. No one else is talking about Sound of Metal, right?
Oh
Okay,
I
no.
good.
don't think so.
Haven't
one's
seen
Okay,
talking about
it.
great.
it.
Okay, great. So I'm going to actually swap out what I was going to talk about and talk about Sound of Metal.
I'm so glad
Okay.
because it would be criminal for us not to mention it. So thank you.
Yes, no problem. So I was able to, I think it was Middle Valley Film Festival, did a lot of good online streaming for films. And Sound of Metal was a film that I was hearing really great buzz out of the Toronto Film Festival about it. I was hearing really interesting things. It is directed by Darius Martyr. This is his first actual feature-length film as a director. He did a documentary before this, but this is his first feature. And it centers around actor Riz Ahmed, who was in Nightcrawler and The Night of. He's a drummer in a rock band, and it grapples with him navigating his becoming hearing impaired and losing his hearing.
Oh, wow. I
And
did not know that.
yeah, it's really good. It just came to Prime a week ago. It is, my God, it is a movie. I think for me, it's the movie Dick Johnson is Dead, which Carissa was just talking about, hit me probably the hardest, like emotionally. It was like my biggest cry. Whereas I think Sound of Metal and another movie I'll talk about later really just like hit me in this like deep emotional core of my body around the way you connect with this community of folks who are either deaf, hearing impaired, or have issues with their hearing, because a lot of what you get to see is folks who are actors who actually are hearing impaired in this journey in the story help Riz Ahmed's character navigate what that means. And so I think the film does such a great job of boiling down, the experience of someone who had active full hearing into someone who's gradually losing a piece of their ability status as an older person. And Riz Ahmed's performance is just, oh my God, he will probably be my best actor of the year, like in the lead actor category. I think he's so flawless in the film. He's a great performer. I think some people potentially, I've heard some quabbles with the sound design being too sound designy, but I think the sound design of this film is utterly flawless because you get to visually, or you get to audibly understand what he's navigating through his hearing loss. And I don't really want to spoil any of the journey he goes on, because I think that's important for you to understand and resonate with his character growth and development. But what you hear in sound design is actively really so interesting. It's some of the most interesting sound design I've heard in all year. And then Olivia Cooke is great. And I don't love her, but I think she's really growing into her. She plays his girlfriend, and I think she's really strong as well. And there's a gentleman named Paul Reesey who is hearing impaired, who leads this hearing impaired kind of collective or commune. And he is, oh my God, his performance is heartbreaking. It's just a really, really, really great film.
And Matt, it sounded like you had some thoughts on this too.
All I want to say in this case is that it's actually interesting in that, Eric, we were talking about what came out this year and the weirdness of this year. I actually think it's stupidly been an amazing year for film. Like,
I
it's
agree.
been so hard to find a lot of stuff because there's been so much material. But in a different year, Sound of Metal would have been my number one pick. Like, it's that good. As it is currently, it's my number 7. So,
Wow.
like, it's absolutely fantastic. I think everybody should see it because it is a fantastic piece.
Oh, it's my number 7 too, actually. I just am not talking about some of my other films, but we tied. Love it.
There you go. I will say to the folks listening, I'm going to defer to the other people on this podcast on that, because these folks really were living and breathing the film industry this past year, and I am, I guess, a tourist in that. No, I'm not doing that self-deprecating. I'm really trying to make the point that in this particular one, with movie and excuse me, with music and TV, I would say that I'm up there with the rest of them. With this one, the subject matter experts, for those listening at home, are Carissa, Kevin, and Matt. And so please weight their opinions far higher than you would mine. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Matt. What's your first one to discuss?
Surprisingly, based on your phrasing of that, my first one is First Cow.
There you go. And that's why I said that, because I was looking at it on my sheet.
You see, in that case, I'm just like, oh, it's a coincidence. You're like, no, Matt, I am Eric. I have plans. So First Cow is about 2 men, a skilled baker and then a Chinese immigrant entrepreneur, who are kind of wandering, kind of like avoiding like other people in the 1820s Northwest. And the 2 of them end up collaborating on a successful business through, I love this phrasing, through the clandestine participation of a nearby cow.
I'm just smiling my way through this entire description. I also saw it and loved this film, and it's so charming.
It is. And that's, I think, so I had been desperately wanting to see this, and again, it was supposed to open right around the time theaters closed for the pandemic. And so when I finally got a chance to catch it on streaming, I was so excited that this actually lived up to the unreasonable expectations I had placed upon a movie called First Cow. It's quiet, but it also has elements of like a little bit of tension to it. But it's about the central relationship between these two men who are both trying to survive, and about, again, like class struggles and power struggles, going back as far as, not that we know that the 1820s wasn't without that, because obviously it very much was, but it's like things where we were like, this still is a problem, like
Yep.
so like so much later. And also, if you like the idea of, like, occasionally, I think I'm doing a bad job wording this, but like, I think food porn on screen
Yes.
usually
Yes.
ends up with like these cool, like hugely elaborate situations. And First Cow has amazing food porn about oily cakes, like rough,
Oh,
like early donuts cooked over fires, like,
But that
you know,
honey, though, right? Don't they put the
honey. Oh
honey?
my
Yeah,
God.
yeah.
Like, it's First Cow is a fantastic, fantastic little film. I love it. Kelly Reichardt did such a great job.
And Kevin, you wanted to talk about it, right?
oh my God. I worship at the altar that is Kelly Reichardt. She teaches at Bard.
Same.
She teaches at Bard. She is probably, I'm really grateful that my friend introduced me to her. I think if you love films about human study that are just about authentically living a day in the life of a person, all of her films are hands down the films to see. And this one is just great. And the only thing I want to add to this, also on top of that, because I could wax poetic about her for hours and I won't, is this also reads very queer, and she's very good at creating these like queer adjacent masculine stories. She did it with Old Joy, which came out in, I think, 2006. And so the lead in this, John Majaro, did an interview with a friend of mine, and he was like, absolutely, there's definitely a queer adjacency to this. We played it that way. It works that way. In a way, this is not just, it's a love story between these two men. They set up a home together. It's really beautiful. Again, I could talk for hours, but it's a great, great, great film.
Awesome. And again, as the tourist, it was one that was not on my radar. So thank you to my film experts. I will go for my second pick for this year, which is the 40-year-old version, not virgin, version, Version. This is by writer, director, and star Rada Blank. And it's on Netflix. You can watch it now. And it is the story of a woman named Rada who's just shy of her 40th birthday. She was a playwright who a decade prior had made the 30 under 30 list. So she was something of a prodigy, had a very, auspicious career in front of her that never quite materialized. And she's now teaching school to inner city youth, teaching drama, and she's trying to figure out what the fuck to do with her life, especially since she's becoming 40. And it's not a super high concept film, but it is a very endearing film. And what resonated with me was it's dealing with a lot of very interesting and very relevant topics that we're dealing with right now. You've got creativity versus commerce being a big backbone of this. There's a lot of discussion about what it means to sell out and whether or not that's actually wrong. There's the discussion of women in 40 struggling to be taken seriously by society, and in many different areas of society. There's complex racial and emotional or economic issues going on here, and perhaps more importantly, the quandary of why gay men have black women's butts. And so it is a very funny, charming movie. It absolutely sags in the middle. Like, there's parts where I was like, this could be tightened up, but at the same time I was like, I can't identify a scene to take out unless you take out the entire subplot with her students, which I don't think is the right choice. But it starts strong, it ends strong, and in the middle you get some really fantastic rap verses by both Rada and at one point she goes to a Queens of the Ring rap battle, which is a fantastic scene. And I would watch anything that she does for hours. I think she's really magnetic and she's hilarious, and I'm hoping that we see a lot more of her in the coming years, because for me, I was not familiar with her before this movie and I really fell in love with her within minutes. So that is my number 4. And with
Do you mind if I give you credit? Because I love that you've downplayed your input into our podcast, but Onward, I mean, isn't a terrible movie. It's quite enjoyable, and 40-year-old version is very good. So your taste is is super great, Eric. Don't downplay that for yourself.
I'm not trying to do self-deprecating. I swear, if I
I
was, I would
know,
own
but
up to
you
that.
have two good movies. Two good movies. You're
I
solid.
think my picks are accessible, is what I will say. And
Hmm.
deliberately, all of my picks are available for now. Almost all of them are streaming free. So if you are interested, you can find these on either Netflix, Amazon Prime, Disney Plus, whatever. But
Eric,
thank you, Kevin.
Eric, I want to quickly double down on what Kevin just said, because I have been wanting to watch this film and I have not gotten to it yet, and so therefore you have now made it go further up my queue. So thank you, Eric. So,
There
I
you
just
go.
find it's charming. That's how I felt about it. And
I
she's great.
I also saw it, and there's a lot. I mean, I am a woman who is about to be turning 40, and so I really looked to this film as like, show me what to do. And it really, she's just like, I don't fucking know what to do. And you're like, well, great, thanks. But
But she figures it out.
yeah, and I think there's a lot of imposter syndrome too, kind of like with the students. Yeah, I found it really relatable. It was on my long list. It just didn't. It's sort of like what Matt was saying about, number 7 having some other year being number 1. Like I also liked it a lot. I thought it was really good.
And I'll say this, I'm past 40, but the thing that really kept speaking to me, and obviously Rod Blank and I are coming from completely different places, but my whole thing was I'm starting a podcast without knowing anything about podcasts in this past year, and I'm just going for it. Fuck it. And I feel like
Right.
that very much is exactly what's going on in this film. And
That's
I
really the
appreciate
only
it.
way to do anything.
Yeah, just fuck it. Like, what else are you going to do?
yeah,
What are you going to do?
absolutely.
So, Karissa, go on with your 4th pick.
Okay, so my 4th pick is also a documentary called Class Action Park, which is an HBO Max streaming. And okay, so it's 2020. Everyone's having a shit year. Like, I don't want to turn this into the Notting Hill brownie scene, but like, I've been fucking going through it. Okay. So, like, I've had a shit year. And this documentary came to me at the exact right time when I needed to focus on someone else's suffering that wasn't
Yes.
my own. And this happened in the past. So, like, who are these people? I don't, they brought this on themselves for the most part. So it's a documentary about an actual place, like a water park, but not all of the rides were water, called Action Park, that was in New Jersey in like the 80s and early 90s, I think, until it got shut down. And it just, like, it is mind-boggling how terrifying this place is. And the documentary is just like, it's so absurd because whatever that you think, like, okay, they have to be done talking about the worst of this, but there's an hour left. And then they're like, yeah, well, and then there was the kayak experience. And you're like, how can the kayak experience, how can something called that be dangerous? And then they proceed to tell you how people were electrocuted on that ride. You're like, oh my God. So just to give you a taste, this is in the beginning of the film, and this is when I like fully signed on. So there's a ride that looks like a loop-de-loo, and they put people down it, and like they come out the other side. But they're talking about it in the beginning and saying that ride was always shut down. And basically this theme park figured out its safety by trial and error and not studying physics. So they would put through their employees, which were all like tiny teenagers with summer jobs who did not care. And then they would start putting down people of different sizes to see how that worked. And so everyone was coming out of this ride like all scratched up, and they couldn't figure out what happened. So they took apart the top of the loop-de-loop, and they found a bunch of people's teeth embedded in the padding. The teeth of previous riders was embedded in the padding and was scratching people when they came through. So, like, if this doesn't make you laugh, then you don't want to watch this movie. But I had a great time. So, yeah, it was what I needed. It was the Schadenfreude, like I just I had to do it.
Schadenfreude for the win. Honestly, that is fantastic. I have not yet watched this one. I've been meaning to. I
You
wish
have
I
to.
have to. I would love it. It sounds like it's made for me. It's just HBO Max still does not have a Roku app, which drives me crazy. But we got to figure it out because I've been wanting to watch this forever, and I'm so glad that you brought it up to here because it totally fits right into my particular worldview. Anything else to say about that? Anybody want to add?
I'm horrified
Otherwise-
and intrigued.
Yeah.
Embedded into
Ditto.
American Horror Story season 11, Teeth in the Water Slide.
Seriously. See, I mean, come on. That's like the first 5 minutes of the movie, and you're like, well, I'm in.
I'm in. All right, Kevin, give me your number 4 pick.
My number 4 is Mank by David Fincher. I was actively looking forward to this film, although, with directors like this, I go in trepidatious because I never know what the experience is going to be like. And so Mank follows Gary Oldman, who plays Herman Mankiewicz. Herman Mankiewicz was the screenwriter for Citizen Kane. One of the 2 credited screenwriters for Citizen Kane. Orson Welles is the other, although according to this film, Orson Welles really didn't do that much. And so other than play Citizen Kane. And so the film follows the intersections of Mankiewicz's writing process and the gubernatorial race between Upton Sinclair and, oh God, I'm going to forget the other person. Upton Sinclair, who was pro-labor and was more of what we would consider a socialist liberal, quote unquote, today. The film was actually written by Jack Fincher, David Fincher's dad, who passed away 17 years ago. There have, of course, been draft rewrites, but David Fincher gave his father full credit for writing the screenplay. I know folks have had varying opinions on this film. My one thing that I don't get about this is the complaint is that it's cold. I love cold and aloof. I don't know about you, but I want it in a lover. So in a film, it's even better. I think the thing that really sparks to me with this film is when I was watching this and I just was like, this feels like I'm watching a film that was filmed in the 1950s. And I was just like transfixed and transported back to that. And I really liked that. I also knew there was some politics to it, but I think the politics angle is super interesting because I think it translates to today. Essentially, what happens is that studio bosses, Louis B. Mayer and Irving Thalberg, create this essentially like power vacuum to prevent and create a system that creates propaganda to prevent Upton Sinclair from losing the gubernatorial race because he is a quote unquote socialist. So that weaves into the story of Citizen Kane and the creation of the film. I did not watch Citizen Kane before I watched this intentionally because I did not want to marry the two because I know that the two are going to be different. One is going to be influenced by one and the other one is not. But I think for me, what really worked in this, I'll say this, Gary Oldman's performance is fine, but it is not the thing that I gravitate to most in this film. And I think that that's something that can be disappointing for folks. Everyone around him builds this very intimate world around the system and Hollywood and what it was like and what it looks like. And I will say this, Amanda Seyfried, props. Really, really great. I mean, give her, please don't give Glenn Close the Oscar. Give Amanda the Oscar. She is really good. She delivers a legitimate supporting performance. And boy, does she disappear into that role. And it reminds me of that classic night. Obviously, she's playing Marion Davies, who was an actress, but she reminds me of those like, oh God, what's her face from Singing in the Rain? She reminds me of that.
Debbie Reynolds?
Not Debbie Reynolds, the one who was like, I can't stand ya. Oh my gosh. She was you know what I'm talking about. Yeah. She reminds me of that type of person, and she's just really great. I think the movie has more heart than I expected it to, especially since everyone described it as cold. I think my advice for those who do not like it is to go back and rewatch it again, because I think you will find what is missing. I don't think it's a perfect movie, but I really enjoyed the ride, and the technical aspects are immaculate.
And it's now on Netflix, correct?
It is now on Netflix, correct.
Great. Thank you for that. Matt, your fourth choice.
My fourth choice is also on Netflix. So the
Oh.
age of streaming is Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, which is about 1927. Tensions rise when Ma Rainey, who is described as the mother of the blues, she and her band gather in a Chicago recording studio to make a new album. The film it's directed by George C. Wolfe, who I think a lot of people probably know for more of his stage work than his film work, because he has Tony Awards for Angels in America, and also Bring Into Noise, Bring Into Funk. Um, but in this case, so he's directing based on a 1982 play by August Wilson. So it does have like there's always that I think difficulty of adapting stage to screen and deciding how much to make it still feel like a stage play or how much to expand it. And I think there's always that challenge. Um, Something that I think we previously touched upon as a group, and then we'll touch upon more later, is like I think that Ryan Murphy in The Prom does a good job of expanding it from feeling like it's just on stage, like it has multiple places and settings and camera work. Ma Rainey's Black Bottom still does feel a little bit like it's still on stage, but it's so tightly scripted and tightly like directed that it just expands just enough. But the thing I'm not saying about this is that the performances in this film, top to bottom, are absolutely incredible. Viola Davis as Ma Rainey, Chadwick Boseman. This was his final performance as the trumpet player in her band. Um, and the entire thing is about the historic exploitation of Black recording artists by white producers and what that relationship is and how that relationship existed. And it's heartbreaking, but it's also, in this case, the performances are so good that you're rooting for them despite knowing that the odds are stacked against them. Um, I think it is a not just a textbook example, but like a really, really great example of taking again a play from the early 80s and it feeling not just as relevant, but beyond still relevant today. Its cinematography and production design both have an old postcard look to it. It's fantastic.
So as we're recording this, Matt was able to get access to it early. This is the movie I am most excited to see for the rest of the year, and I'm including Wonder Woman 1984 in that list. But I'm desperate, and it doesn't come out until I think Christmas Eve or Christmas Day.
So
Next week.
Yeah, they
Is
keep
it next week?
changing the date because now also.
Oh yeah, that's right. It was supposed to be this week.
Yeah, they keep changing it. So I think it's now December 18th. So
Okay. I could not be more excited to see this film. Very excited. So thank you, Matt. I'm glad you were able to and brought it to us. With that, we are going to go out to the lobby and get ourselves a snack. Don't we miss lobbies? Don't we miss movie snacks? And we're going to take the quickest of breaks, but we will be right back. Come on back. And we are back with our discussion of the best films of 2020. I'm going to pick it up with my third pick, which is Borat Subsequent Movie Film, which is on Amazon Prime. I'm not going to say that the Borat sequel is a great film. I'm not even going to go there. I'm going to say that it's an important film, however, and I think it's a necessary encapsulation of where America was leading up to the 2020 presidential election, which if you're listening to this in the future and you weren't aware of what was going on, was a fucking shit show. And I am confident that within the next 5, 10, 15 years, the GOP is going to work very hard to whitewash this period, even though everything has been documented. They're going to try to do what they did for Reagan and what they successfully did for Oliver North and be like, it wasn't that bad. don't listen to them. It was no, it was that bad. It was crazy, and I'm very glad that the Borat sequel exists because you have scenes where literally Sacha Baron Cohen is going undercover, not terribly successfully, at a gun rally in Washington State and sings a song about the Kung flu. And obviously, I'm saying this not because I believe any of this shit, but because that's the terminology used, and easily gets the crowd, actual people, involved in singing about who should die from the coronavirus. I believe there's talks of lynching, and they're all right on board with it. And it is disgusting. It is an absolute disgusting call out of how easily that crowd will go along with incitement to violence for anyone other than them. And that is why I'm glad this movie exists, because this needs to be out there and people need to watch it. And it was hugely successful. I'm also going to argue that from a political and news situation, no other movie that I think we're going to be discussing on this list grabbed headlines the way that this one did for the scene with Borat's daughter, a fictional character played in the film by the actress I can't remember, but she's very good in it, and Rudy Giuliani in a hotel room where, regardless of what happened, Rudy Giuliani goes into a private hotel bedroom with a woman he believes to be under the age of 21, and he could be fixing his microphone. I don't know. But personally, I don't think I need to be sticking my hands down my pants in front of young women in a private hotel room. The whole thing is sketchy as fuck. It grabbed headlines. It should have grabbed headlines. It's a mess. And I do think that this may be a farce, but the population that it is capturing in this farce is very real, and America needs to constantly have it shoved in its face, because I see it happening right now. As we're recording this, the Biden administration is going in. I'm already seeing Democrats tearing at each other already, and the sameism, like, we're going backwards because there's not currently a single Asian American on the cabinet. We're going backwards? Are you kidding me? Like, we have a very short memory in this country, and that's why I'm glad this movie exists. So with that, I'm going to pass it off to Karissa for her third pick.
I mean, I think I just need to take a second.
Yeah.
Okay. On the opposite end of the spectrum, I am today years old when I actually did the research and learned this, and I'm extra excited. My film is Yes, God, Yes, which was written and directed by Karen Maine, who wrote Obvious Child, which is one of my favorite films. It stars Jenny Slate. It is everything that you wish Knocked Up would have been. It's about a woman who gets pregnant on a first one-night stand, and it has a lot of Simon and Garfunkel in it. It is incredible, and I love that film. And so Yes, God, Yes is also written by Karen Maine, but this is her directorial debut. And it is so fun, I guess. Like, it is so good. It stars Natalia Dyer, who is in Stranger Things. She's the sister, the older sister. Barb's best friend. And she
R.I.P. Barb.
right.
Glamour icon forever.
And she runs this whole film. So it's about a woman or a teenager. She's like 17, I think, in like the early 2000s, who is told that there's a rumor going around her school that she tossed some guy's salad, and she spends the whole film trying to figure out what that means. And so it's like the early days of AOL chat, and she ends up going to this Catholic, well, she's Catholic, I think she goes to Catholic school, but she goes on this like weekend retreat thing because this really cute boy is there. And she's trying to figure out what's going on with herself, and she's like constantly trying to masturbate, but constantly being interrupted. And it is just,
that sounds like my life story.
It's relatable for everyone. Like, I don't think you need to have a vagina to like this film. I just found it like, okay, there's a scene early-ish on where she writes something with a pencil, and then she decides she wants to undo it, so she starts to erase it, and then realizes that the pencil she has one of those really hard erasers that's almost all the way down, and it's mostly metal, and she's just scratching the thing, and the thing she wanted to disappear is now extra obvious. Like, so if you can't relate to that, I don't know. There's also a kind of a running joke about the hand on the car window in Titanic scene, and it spoke to me. So
and that's Chris. I just want to add with that, because I also loved this film, and I thought it's especially, I think it's universal, anyone could appreciate it, but especially if you lived through the late 90s, early aughts. I feel
Mhm.
like, yeah, like the age of Tamagotchis and early cell phones and AOL noises are so
And
nostalgic in this.
the download speed to see a photo.
Yes, yeah.
Because that's a running thing. Like, she's trying to find out what it means to toss somebody's salad, you know, and like she's trying to see a photo, and it just takes forever to load, and it's all surreptitious, and she has to close it before she can see, and it's very funny.
Today's kids will never know.
I mean, they won't, but this is trying to tell them, because the Titanic, that the video that she watches is a VHS. It's the two VHS.
Your VHS
So,
Titanic.
yep.
This also does reinforce the importance of why lesbian bars are a necessary part of American society.
Yes. Heroes, all of them.
Absolutely.
All of them, absolutely. Thank you, Karissa. That's great.
Mhm.
Kevin, your number 3 pick.
My number 3 pick is Lee Isaac Chung's Minari. I was finally able to snag a copy through a friend who gave me an A24 person's email address, and I got a screener this past week. It is this lovely, I'm almost Terrence Malick like exploration of Korean immigrants in the 80s who are really just kind of trying to make their way in everyday life, in surviving and thriving in America. It is easily my favorite score of the year. I think
Yes.
it's so beautiful. The person who does the score, his name is Emile Moret. He also did the score for last year's Last Black Man in San Francisco, which is also utterly stunning. I mean, this man is a genius, and I hope he gets the attention he deserves. This stars Stephen Yeun from Walking Dead, and I have absolutely loved the trajectory of his career in non-English language films. He did Burning a couple of years
Mhm.
ago, which is
Yeah.
one of, oh my God, if you have not seen Burning, I think it's on Netflix. It is, oh my God, it is it's such this great like Hitchcock thriller. I'm not talking about Burning, I'm talking about Minari, but Stephen Yeun has done this evolution of his career, and he plays this, like, it's a very different role for him versus his Burning character, where there's just such like love and empathy. He's the dad in the family, and he isn't exactly the lead. It's really mostly about his son, who is meant to be actually the director's experience of being a child of immigrants, Lee Isaac Chung's experience. There's also a really lovely experience with his grandmother, who, again, I'm not going to spoil things. There's a relationship that builds and develops between the young son and the grandmother. It's super beautiful. And what I think Minari does is explore culture in a way that's really super fascinating, and the way that folks had to try and survive and thrive in the new world, regardless of time. But this also cuts across race and language and community. There's actually a really beautiful scene, this doesn't spoil anything, where they decide to go to a Christian church in the middle of the Midwest. And I think they're obviously the only Asian family in this church. And the otherism that you just kind of see and feel is just really poignant. And I think you get to really explore what it feels like for folks who are non-white, who are coming to this country in the 1900s to navigate what it means to like look for the American dream, quote unquote. And I think this film encapsulates this so perfectly. It's just a genuinely delightful and lovely, lovely, lovely film.
Kevin,
Please seek this out.
Kevin, I hadn't thought about describing it as Malick-like, and that's such a great description. Like, thank you for that, because I feel like it's more accessible and funnier than Malick's.
Oh, 100%. Yes.
Yeah.
That's the like part. Malick is fully.
I mean, it doesn't take much, right?
Right.
Let's be real.
one joke, and Malik's like, "What is this doing here?" But no, Kevin, I agree. It's just, again, I hate to say this again, but like in this particular year, this would have been so much higher on my list. But I had to bump things down and move things around. But no, it's beautiful.
It's so great.
And
it's
what
so
an
great.
ending! Holy crap! Like I was just edging my seat. Ugh.
Another beautiful ending. It's just so simple, and like I think the thing that I've taken away, I guess, in summary of my films is this year my favorite films have boiled down into a simplicity. Simple is more, and there's beauty in less, and like there's beauty in just the visual in 2020 films.
Yeah,
and that's a lesson from 2020 in general, I think.
I think
Sure
that fits a lot of my picks too, really.
Yeah.
mm-hmm.
Look at us, we're learning, we're growing together. I love to see it. Love to see it. Thank you, Kevin. Matt, your third pick.
Despite just agreeing with that generally across the board about like the lesson and simple is more, my third pick is completely goes against that, which is Wolfwalkers, which is the new animated film from Cartoon Saloon. They previously did The Secret of Kells and Song of the Sea. Wolfwalkers is about a young girl, an apprentice hunter, and her father, who journey to Ireland to help wipe out the last wolf pack that is quote unquote terrorizing outside a settlement village. But then she ends up befriending a girl who then turns out to be from the wolf pack because she is a wolf walker, kind of like a werewolf situation, but from Irish folklore. Wolfwalkers is I kind of have a similar issue to my taste, which is kind of like Ebert, where like I am very won over by highly stylized visuals. Like you immediately grab me and hold me if your visuals are so original and outlandish and stylized that like I'm like, oh, I've never seen this before. Wolfwalkers for me fits that to a T in terms of, in an age where a lot of animation continues to get a little similar looking, I feel like now finally we're differentiating our CGI animation out a little bit. But Wolfwalkers involves two worlds. It involves a Puritan-esque village and then the forest. And so the art direction in this film takes the village and makes it entirely woodblock prints. It all has that look of very angular and like a little bit like difficulty in etching it. And then the forest is entirely watercolor and textured graphite. And so they are so visually different that when the worlds start merging and the visual elements start merging, it's absolutely incredible. I cannot begin to tell you how visually imaginative and narratively poignant this film is. By far, for me, it is the best animated film this year and the best animated film since Into the Spider-Verse.
Is it available for streaming anywhere, do you know?
It is on Apple TV Plus.
God damn it.
I know. And that's the thing is that like, so I thankfully got to see it at the Toronto International Film Festival this year, which was streaming. But it's Apple TV because they've been grabbing some great stuff, and I appreciate that for them. But another streaming service, like, come on,
Right.
Now we're getting into the problem of like cable channels, and there's just too many of them. And
bingo. And there will be a big implosion within the next 3 years. There will have to be, and there will be a mass kind of conglomeration of them, which is
Absolutely
fine. Well, that sounds fascinating, Matt, and I can't wait to see that eventually when it's not on a platform that I don't have. So
that's the thing. That's the problem. It's gorgeous, and it's appropriate for both adults and appropriate for families and kids. But right now, it is on the platform with a very, very little limited user base. So it's a problem.
It is a problem, but thank you. It sounds great. I will go for my number 2 pick, The Boys in the Band on Netflix. And I know that this is going to be, there's at least one person on this podcast who's not a huge fan of this, and that's fine. But
I'm not saying anything.
There may be more than one person.
Oh, and I hadn't seen it, so
And here's what I will say about this one. So this is Ryan Murphy's redo of the 1968, I think, seminal play about gay men set in New York City. And here's why I resonated with this one is it is very much a time capsule, right? It is looking at what life was like for mid-century gay men in America, even in New York City. And I think one of the wonderful things about American Progress is that today, gay men in their 20s or 30 somethings, generally speaking, I'm making an assumption here, but more often than not are able to live their lives openly and not have the fear of consequence. And I don't think maybe they're as aware of what the people before us did to make that a reality. And so I think it's important to keep educating future generations about that. And I'm not saying that in a kind of patronizing way. I'm saying it as it's good to know your history because we didn't get here without a lot of sacrifice and a lot of pain. But I also think it's still very relevant in that there continues to be a lot of mental health issues and a lot of self-hatred among the gay community that expresses itself especially in the way we communicate with each other. And that was where this movie felt very true to me. So it is, I believe, entirely cast and behind the scenes with LGBT actors and crew. You have Jim Parsons in the lead role, which I'll get back to in a minute, but you also have Andrew Rannells. You also have Charlie Parsons. Is that correct? Am I?
I don't know.
Are you
Charlie
talking about
Carver.
Charlie Carver?
excuse
I was
me.
going to say
Yeah.
the twink. Yep.
Yep, the twink. Zachary Quinto, Matt Bomer. I had never been introduced to Tuck Watkins, but I'm so glad that this movie did because
Oh,
he's Daddy AF.
Eric, Eric, he was in One Life to Live, and I remember him from many, many years ago. He is excellence.
He is like daddies are gonna run the world in the next 5 years, I feel, and like he 100% can get it. But so I hear the criticisms specifically relating to Parsons. Jim Parsons is not an actor that I've really ever cared for. And hot take, I think him winning all those Emmys for Big Bang Theory for essentially just playing a very heightened and very narrow range version of himself is bullshit, but fine. I actually think this is the most successful I've ever seen Jim Parsons in a role. And in terms of that hissing, spitting, scratching gay, I thought he was very well cast and very effective. The ultimate takedown between him and Zachary Quinto's character is, I thought, very realistic, especially from the time period that it existed in. And that's very real. Like, that is the height of like gays scratching at each other, and there's a lot of pain and a lot of truth there. So that's why I liked this movie. I'm not going to say that it's a perfect movie, but as a time capsule, I think it was actually very important, and I'm glad that we had a reversion of it that's accessible to modern audiences. So that's where I'm coming from there. I know there are people who have strong opinions on this on the podcast, so if you do want to briefly share your takedowns of it, I welcome that.
I know we're going to be positive, and I'm going to give it 2 compliments. I'm glad that Emery is played by an actual
Yes.
Hispanic Latinx person.
Yes.
He
Love
was
that.
great. Yeah.
He's great. And I actually think the film does a really good job of actually expanding on the Charlie Carver role, which is essentially a non-entity in the original play, original version. And I think there's a depth and sweetness to the performance that he gives that I think was fully missing from the original play. That I do think expands the depth of who those young men, the quote unquote midnight cowboys were of that era. So I think those 2 pieces are things that I absolutely will give it credit for, and I will say no more.
That's fair. And Karissa, did you have anything you wanted to add?
I mean, for me, it felt like a play.
Yeah.
So I didn't like. Maybe Ma Rainey's does a better job of that, you know. But for me, I was kind of like, the film wasn't doing more for me in that way. So.
100. And when Matt was describing Ma Rainey and specifically talking about plays adapted to the screen and is it making use of the actual, what's the word, medium here? Boys in the Band is not. Boys in the Band very much feels like a play. But I don't necessarily have a problem with that. I can't go to see plays right now. So for me,
Yeah.
being able to see this, even though it is very much a chamber piece, it's a play, to me it was not a negative, but I can see how it would be a negative for other people.
And
So
I think it's also it's tough because for a play that's really, really good, it is so well scripted and it's all about the characters and it's about the dialogue, is that the setting in effect in effect becomes somewhat secondary depending on what the play is, of course. Like,
sure.
so I think
Mm.
that it's just, I think it's a constant battle that is faced in plays being adapted to screen, and I think some are more successful than others. There's been a lot of discussion about that also for Five Nights in Miami, about whether or not it expands the play enough. So I think it's interesting, but Boys in the Band also is in effect just entirely in an apartment, right? Isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I mean, like, that's the thing, is like, does it need to be expanded beyond the apartment? I don't know. I haven't seen it, so I don't know. It's an interesting challenge, I think.
Yeah,
Do you
because it kind of can't. And
Yeah.
there are some toward the end you get like flashbacks, but really, really briefly. And that's
Yeah.
the only time you ever leave the room, but like you don't, right? Because you're still in someone's head. It's a memory.
and there's the establishing start that everybody getting to the party is set outside of it, but is that necessary? Not really. It
Yeah.
gives you a kind of a glimpse into the various couples or characters. Like there's some good establishing stuff with Andrew Reynolds and Tuck Watkinson's character where you get
Who are
very
a couple in real life.
in real life.
Oh.
Are
Exactly.
they
Yeah.
really?
Oh.
They are,
Yep.
which good for you, Andrew Reynolds. And P.S. to Tuck Watkins, if that doesn't work out, please come find me. With that, I'm going to pass it off to Karissa for your number 2 pick.
Oh my gosh. So this is a movie that you're not going to want to see. And I don't know how to really present this in a way to make anybody want to see it. So I'm just going to be really real, which is what this movie is. It's called Never, Rarely, Sometimes, Always. And it is about abortion access,
Yep.
especially for young women. So it's a film, it really has a cinema verite feel. It follows 2 women who are cousins. They're like 16 from rural central Pennsylvania who go to New York City to get an abortion. And there's a waiting period and they have to stay overnight. And nothing has, I love my job. I love my job. I've done my job for 16 and a half years. Nothing has ever made me want to quit my job. Like watching this movie, I was like, I'm going to quit on Monday and I'm going to work at a clinic and I'm going to ensure access for women who are marginalized and who don't have it. Like this film inspired me in ways that, I mean, I still have my job. I didn't do that, but I wanted to, and it made me want to, because it's not preachy. It just shows you, it shines a light on a thing that people overlook. And like, it's a problem, even though abortion is still technically legal. Access is a problem. And this movie doesn't shy away from it and what it's like to be a teen girl dealing with this. So I think it's an important work. It's not necessarily fun, but I think it's really important.
And we say that abortion is legal, but it's legal for now. And I think, again, to get back on the soapbox that I was standing on during Borat, for those listening in the future, we don't know what's about to happen. But right now, the cards are stacked so that could very easily be taken away. And so I think it's very important that film is coming out in this year.
Well,
given
and
where we
legal
stand in the
is
courts.
kind of such a technicality, right? Because some states have
Right.
one clinic, and this just like these girls work in a grocery store. There's you never find out who the father is of this, but it seems like it's a family member. It's heavily implicated. They have no money. They steal from the till at the grocery store so they can afford a bus ticket. I think it felt really real and it felt really important. And these are the things that people are struggling, like, even though it's legal, these are still obstacles, major obstacles that women are having to overcome all the time.
And there's that scene where she goes to the clinic in Pennsylvania, and the woman basically tries to talk her out of it and says, no, you need to come back and have a conversation with me about why.
Yep.
And so, like,
it's not a clinic, right? It's one of those like birth.
Right.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. And
it's a great movie.
Yeah. And also, when we had at one point talked about like best performances of the year and everything. Like, Kevin, I think you and I both said that Sydney Flanagan, the lead in this, was like at the top, if not near the top of like
Yep.
list. She's amazing. And Chris, I agree with everything you said. I think it's such a necessary watch, like,
It
because I
is.
think it's so straightforward in
Yeah.
its presentation, and
Yeah.
your heart can't do anything but just empathize.
Yeah, and
A lot.
it's not on a soapbox, it's not any, it
Nope.
just is like, here, look at this. And this was her first film.
Yeah.
Second, her second, because
Was it?
her first film was, I was just gonna say, Eliza Hittman is just this great character study of like slice of life experiences. Her first film is Beach Rats,
Right.
which explores this like young closeted gay man's experience in I think he lives in New Jersey, but travels into New York City, and I think maybe it's not New Jersey, it might be Long Island, but I know he goes to like Coney Island is a big spot where you get to see the space of the film. And like what you explore with her work is just really like young folks grappling with the I guess repression of their space and how they navigate growing into or not escaping per se, but finding themselves in that. And I think she does such a good job of giving you this like early 20s experience. I watched Beach Rats at IFF Boston Spring Festival a couple of years ago, and I remember seeing her at a coffee shop, and I almost approached her, but I wanted to give her her space. Uh, I saw her there with her wife because I believe she is a queer woman. And I think she just has. I'm really excited to continue to see what she does more of.
Yeah, the part of the film, like, you kind of know what the title is referring to, but the part of the film where you get to, she's at the clinic in New York, and they're like, okay, so I'm going to ask you questions, and these are, I want you to answer never, rarely, sometimes, always. And it just is like, it is incredibly gutting and incredibly powerful. And I'm glad this film exists.
Thank you,
Me too.
Karissa.
Yeah.
That's great. And is it available for streaming anywhere?
HBO Max.
Eric. Yes.
It's fine. We'll figure it out. But thank you. I appreciate
I
it.
think it is also on like iTunes and Amazon.
Okay, great. Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
happy to pay money for these. I've spent a lot of money on movie rentals this year.
I was like,
Eric,
I mean, I shouldn't take
message
away
me
from the
after.
HBO Max. Sorry. Go, Kev.
It's Matt, go first.
I say I shouldn't try to take away from the HBO Max sponsorship, of course, but
Of course. And now, Kevin, you were saying?
Message me after.
Okay. Speaking of Kevin, what is your number 2 pick?
Oh, it is David Byrne's American Utopia, which is honestly, if you really want to experience joy in your life, good Lord, this is the film. It is just this really, David Byrne is just this super awkward white dude who is just lovely. And he creates this musical stage experience that really delves into how art informs who we are and how we connect with one another. And he creates these stage experiences that are beyond what they are. And so this is actually directed by Spike Lee. And like, this is very different from most of the stuff that Spike Lee, I think, in my opinion, has ever done. With that said, I think he allows you to navigate and bookend his original one of his original concert documentaries, Stop Making Sense, which was directed by the late great Jonathan Demme. And you get this really bookended experience of what Stop Making Sense was to what a 2020 experience of culture and art are in concert form. And I think what you see in this is David Byrne is really trying to examine how we connect with each other through music, through art, through culture. And it's just really fun and delightful. And it's just everything I needed in 2020, and it is just a fantastic. Also, sorry, Eric, available on HBO Max.
I I
Um,
think it's also on Amazon Prime though.
is it? Oh,
I,
good, good,
I
I've
good,
think you're
good.
heard of
right.
it.
Yeah.
Oh, good,
Yeah.
good, good, good. But it is fantastic, and I think it is really about exploring how the intersection of humanity and art really work together. And I love the way he elucidates his musicians and brings them to the forefront. This was a show that was on Broadway. I think back in late 2018, 2019.
No, it was on there as recently as this year because my
Oh,
colleague saw it right
but
before I think the pandemic hit.
Oh wow.
oh
I
wow.
believe so.
Okay. So it might have been late 2019. And so I think you I highly recommend this. If you love a good concert doc, this is it. And what you get through Spike Lee and David Byrne working together is just a masterpiece. It is utterly fantastic, and I highly recommend it.
I
Awesome. Thank you.
I
Go
want
ahead, Matt.
to say Eric's going to murder me for bringing up this topic as like a quick aside, but something I just want to
Nope.
like kind of ask the group about is that so I watched American Utopia on Kevin's recommendation, and I completely agree. It is fantastic. It was awesome, and so thank you again, Kevin, because I loved
Of
it.
course.
Yeah, but this is again with like to each our own lists and everything, and we're especially when we've talked a couple times now about stage and screen. One of the things that I have a hard time wrestling with personally is where to rate something that is a filmed version of a stage performance, because
Yep.
something like Hamilton also came out this year.
Yeah.
Spike Jonze's documentary Beastie Boys Story, which is a filmed version of a stage documentary. He literally calls it a stage documentary that's been filmed. And so that's something that I have trouble with American Utopia as a quote unquote film, is because so much of it has been produced for the stage. But I do want to completely note that Spike Lee directs the shit out of
Yes.
this,
Correct.
is that it's not just a couple cameras pointed. You feel that presence of someone directing a filmed version of a stage show. And I think that he does an amazing job of that in terms of taking something that again is just very minimal staging and makes it riveting in its actual direction. So I think it's a fascinating topic.
And
It
I think
is.
that's the distinction, because I know
Yep.
Hamilton might come up later. Sorry. But I think that's the difference between, sorry, I think that's
No,
the difference
fine.
between this and Hamilton. I think for me, that's where I denote it. It's like in the direction.
I agree completely, and Hamilton will not be on my top 5 list,
Oh,
but I'm
it's
glad
not.
we brought
Oh,
this up.
okay.
It's not,
Okay.
yeah. I and for that exact same reason. Listen, no one's gonna sit here and talk shit about Hamilton,
Right.
right?
Yeah,
But,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
watched it when it came out, very much enjoyed it. I'd never seen it on stage because I don't have that kind of money, but, I was like, they did nothing but put up a couple cameras and called it a day, and,
Yep.
that to me is not something that I think is worth putting on my top 5 list.
Well, it's a
In my opinion.
recording. It's a recording and it's not a
Right.
film. That's
Right.
the difference.
Correct.
Although it was initially supposed to be released in theaters, right?
Yeah.
But
yeah.
it's still
It
a
was.
recording and it's still, $10 to see it versus whatever.
Sure.
I'm like that's the way to make it accessible.
Exactly,
But
which
that
I'm not
doesn't make it
complaining
a
about.
film.
Correct. And I think that's exactly what the distinction that we're talking about here. Whereas it sounds like American Utopia, which I have not seen either stage or film, does not do that. And certainly Ma Rainey, Boys in the Band, and the other musical we'll be talking about in a few minutes, they also do not do that approach. So I think that's a very good distinction, Matt, and I'm not at all mad at you for bringing it up. So thank you. On that front, Matt, why don't you go ahead and take number 2?
Sweet. So my number 2, which also does not come out until Christmas Day, is Promising Young Woman.
Oh, I'm so mad that you got to see this already.
And we were talking a little bit during the break about, I am very wary of overhyping this, because I can easily see this as a film that gets so much hype behind it that people, it can't live up to it, but it can't live up to that amount of hype. But also I can absolutely see this being polarizing. I just, for me, I should say something about the plot. A young woman haunted by a tragedy in her past takes revenge on the predatory men unlucky enough to cross her path now.
Yes.
I'm sold.
Icon.
Yes, I'm sold.
And that's
Women,
the thing.
get it done. Get it done. Take them out.
It is the Me Too revenge era.
It is. It really is. And between the fact that this also, I would say, immediately had an iconic teaser poster and illustration of
Yes.
Carey Mulligan lying down, and then also a modern iconic trailer using the like tense Bernard Herrmann string version of Britney Spears' Toxic. Like,
Yes.
I feel like this did a good job of building its own hype. And then for me personally, I was so rocketed into the stratosphere by how much it meets and exceeds that hype. So the director and writer is Emerald Fennell, and it's her directing debut, which I also think is amazing because this film feels so like it feels like a tightly scripted. She knew exactly what she was doing. She knew exactly how she wanted this to come across. It is sinister and funny at the same time. Carey Mulligan is playing very much, I would say, against her normal type in this. She's, again, she's wicked, but in a like very positive way. Like you understand exactly where she's coming from. And
I mean, she's vindictive against men. So yes, we understand where she's coming from.
Yes, that's the thing, is literally at every moment in this, you're like, yep.
Guys, wait, are men bad?
Oh, Kevin.
Hashtag not all men, but also all men.
And
sorry, I had to.
And I also would like to say that so in my opinion, the soundtrack, the song selection in this is bar none the best of the year. Like I watched an interview with Emerald Fennell where she talked about writing most of the songs into the actual script for this as her like these are her dream choices, and they were able to get most of them, but they're all female, or they are female covers of other pre-existing songs. But also, if you didn't already think that Stars Are Blind was a secret,
oh boy,
this completely convinces you. It's so perfectly used in this. It's an amazing sequence.
Do you mean the Paris Hilton song?
I'm sorry.
Stars Are Blind?
Yes, I'm sorry. Paris Hilton's Stars Are Blind as an actual fantastic pop song is used in this amazingly. It's fantastic.
I think
I'm so excited.
2021 should be the year that we actually address the fact that Paris Hilton had not one but two excellent pop songs in the late 2000s between Stars Are Blind and also Screwed. They are actually legitimately good pop songs, and we just need to come to grips with this as a nation.
Listen, if you were not on board before, this convinces you 100%. It is fantastic. Like
this,
so excited.
I mean, this was the movie that I was most looking forward to seeing this year. This one, Saint Maud, which is still indefinite, I think, and then The French Dispatch, the new Wes Anderson, because I just love him. And so I'm glad that this one is actually happening this year, and I'm so excited because it is everything that I, as a feminist and a woman who has been wronged by men, is looking for and has been looking forward to for a long time.
I'm so excited to talk. I'm so excited to talk with you about it afterwards after you see
it. I can't wait.
Oh my God.
And Matt, do you know how people will be able to watch it?
Oh, what an excellent question that I did not actually prepare for this.
That's okay. We will make sure to find that answer for you when we air this episode of the podcast. So
I will pay $20 to rent that movie. Like, I haven't paid $20 to rent anything this year, and that's the one I would pay for.
I'm pretty sure, it's going to be a VOD situation. I'm pretty sure.
It's okay. Take my money.
Yeah, I haven't even been paid $20 to be rented by somebody this year. So, I mean, thanks, 2020.
That's how much The Midnight Cowboy was.
Exactly, Karissa.
And he does his best.
I do my best. Thank you, Matt. That's great. So, my number one pick is very divisive among even the people on this podcast because 50% of it, not impressed. And I've seen other people as well being similarly dismayed by it. But I have also seen other people be just as delighted by it. So this I will give you recency bias is probably playing a big role here, because I would not have picked it as my number one 2 weeks ago. But here we are. So I'm going to go with The Prom, which just came out on Netflix literally 2 days ago. Both of my number 1 and 2 picks are Ryan Murphy adaptations
I
and
was
plays.
just gonna say, Eric, are you in the pocket of big Ryan Murphy? Jesus Christ.
I don't know Ryan Murphy's life, but if the price is right, I could be in his pocket.
Maybe it's $20.
Maybe it's $20.
Oh,
Listen, as I said, I abandoned standards in 2020. So, but here's the thing. I'm not going to, the criticism I've seen of this show, we're going to put this right out of the threat. James Corden, the accent is unforgivable. And there should have been several discussions about that right from the beginning. So we're going to take that. We're going to put it off to the side. The other large issue I've seen with it is that it is ridiculous. It is over the top. It does not have any kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Subtlety. It is just very much a gaudy, ridiculous and implausible romp. It is all of those things, and that's exactly what I needed in this moment in this year. I just thought it was fun, and I thought it was silly, and I thought it was sweet, and it actually made me have feelings, which I do not appreciate. Thank you very much. But I this was very much the way I look at it is this is an old school Hollywood musical, but in a modern take. It's not postmodern. It's just, let's do something goofy where people are bursting into song, and we don't need to have some narrative device for why that's okay. It's very much a callback to old school Hollywood musicals. I mean, the Nicole Kidman character is like the walking representation of Chicago and the chorus line. All of the major characters, as Kevin pointed out, are basically versions, pastiches of Hollywood, or excuse me, Broadway icons. You know, Meryl Streep is playing the Patti LuPone and Liza Minnelli role, etc. And he said that the James Corden role is Nathan Lane, whereas I just get every Nelly ever on Broadway. Like, I don't think it's person specific. But to me, so The Prom was an off-Broadway show that was running while I've lived in New York, and I think it closed right before the pandemic hit. I think that's when The Prom was closing.
It was. Correct.
Yeah, timing of this is kind of fortuitous, I think. I did not get to see it when it was on stage, but I thought that the music in this was actually much better than I was expecting. To be frank with you, there are like 3 or 4 songs I think are really legitimately catchy, especially because we just watched the One Night in Broadway special that was on NBC this week, and I was struck by just how uninspiring some of the other music, especially from Mean Girls, like.
Well, they picked the worst songs from that show. Jesus Christ. What
I was
the
like,
hell?
What are you
I
doing?
don't understand.
But that was true, and I'm sorry, this is a digression. On the Macy's Day Parade, when they also had a Mean Girls number, that number too, I was like, are you trying to make me not interested in this show because you're succeeding? But regardless, I thought that the music in The Prom is actually, there were 3 or 4 songs that were really, I thought, quite strong. It's a message about acceptance and all those highfalutin things and love and LGBT, and obviously you don't need to sell me on that stuff. But I thought it was just fun. It was delightful to me. And I think if you go into it expecting it to be anything other than just goofy and unapologetically gay, then you're probably going to find some issues with it. But for me, I thought it was lovely. So that's my number 1 pick.
So I also loved it. I watched it Friday night when it came out, and I was delighted all the way through. I love Kerry Washington. I hated that she was such a Karen. You know, but like I love her. And Emma, our protagonist, like her baby dyke wardrobe is everything. So adorable.
So
the wardrobe in the whole movie is great.
Yeah, and Nicole Kidman is the aging showgirl. Like, it's perfect. I loved it. It was everything I needed.
And I know that Kevin specifically has issues with Meryl in musicals. I thought Meryl was very well deployed here.
I will give her credit. I think she was fine here. I think I was pleasantly surprised. I just wish, like, if you're going to throw Meryl Streep in a movie, like, or if you're going to throw Nicole Kidman in that supporting role, I wish they did, like, a Greatest Showman blended cast where, like, I think, okay, like, Nicole Kidman is clearly Jane Krakowski. Like, it's so Jane Krakowski. It screams her. She's on a Netflix fucking TV show. Cast her. I've had this argument with friends. People don't watch musicals because of actors. They don't.
Sure.
They watch it because of the brand,
Yeah.
or
Sure.
what is created. And so, like, blend more Broadway stars into these shows. I did think everyone could sing. I thought everyone was fine in this. Now, granted, there was a lot of RuPaul level auto tune along the way, and I'm fine with that. That's fully okay. I think
Auto-tune,
that's
RuPaul, never.
well, and I'm fine with it in this movie,
I'm
but
just kidding.
oh, I know. But I mean, I'm just passing by. But I think I enjoyed the movie. I'm not gonna slight your choice in that sense. I think it was fun. I think James Corden deserves the guillotine, but for his like homophobia in his performance. Actually, to be honest with you, that really belongs to Ryan Murphy because he directed him.
Sure.
But I think everything else was fine and great. I actually genuinely enjoyed Nicole Kidman. Meryl Streep gave a solid performance. Again, I think my critique is like I want musical theater performers to be in musicals. Like I want that. That's my if I have to give a critique to this, that would be it. But I enjoyed the prom. It was fun.
It was fun. Go ahead,
It
Matt.
was
Sorry.
fun.
I was just say, I think that the two big things I want to bring up are, number one is just that I will say this had some of my favorite lighting of the year.
Oh, it's really good.
Yeah, it was like balls to the wall. We're literally just gonna like put as much colorful neon on as we can. I loved it. And especially the shot of Emma and I forget terribly. I feel bad. I forget the name of her girlfriend, but like in the case where they separate and then the lighting within the shot actually changes from a heightened neon back to a like more traditional reality. Like the lighting in this is amazing. So
Yeah.
Yes.
and then secondly, I know this is kind of getting quote unquote ahead of our film situation a little bit, but what I couldn't help, and I hate to do that thing where you compare one thing to another and you're like, well, this wasn't as good as the other thing, blah, blah, blah. But like this reminded me of Everybody's Talking About Jamie.
Oh, yeah.
So
Yep.
that's the thing. So that was a West End production, and then that production was filmed, and then the film adaptation of it is coming out this February.
Sure.
But I got to see the filmed stage adaptation, and it is also about, you know, a queer kid in high school trying to get to prom. And I couldn't help but compare the two because of those elements. And I so preferred Everybody's Talking About Jamie in every way. Like,
Sure.
just from music to the way that it was actually like put together. So I think that's one of the biggest reasons that the prom fell short for me. So I'm interested now to see that as a, let's call it like an American culture, getting them in the opposite order, how that will actually make people affect their feelings about Everybody's Talking About Jamie when it comes out.
That's a super interesting point. I had not even thought about that. I'd seen the trailer for Jamie, but that's very interesting. I can only say from my perspective, I came into the prom with zero expectations, which I think is always helpful.
Yeah.
And coming in at like the second week of December in this fucking turd of a year and just needing something like for those again listening in the future, right now we are still in what is literally an attempted coup in our country by Republican leadership. That's not an exaggeration. They're literally trying to overthrow an actual democratic election through any means necessary. I needed something, an uncomplicated, feel good, fully soaks into your bone, joyful hit. And this was like musical poppers for me.
Yeah.
And so for that reason, I consider it to be my favorite film of the year. It may not be a week from now, much like Poppers. The high comes down very quickly.
It might disappear very quick.
Very quickly. But for now, I'm riding the wave. With that, I'm going to pass it along to Karissa for your pick of the year.
Well, I think also just to say one last thing on the prom, because I love to have the last word. It's also kind of a sad musical. Like it's a musical, but there's a lot of sad moments. So feels real. Feels like 2020. So the best thing I saw this entire year is a film called Swallow about a woman who has pica, and which means swallowing undigestible objects. And the poster is a photo of her holding a tack. And I went into this film having had it recommended by a friend who saw it at a film fest and was like, ooh, now it's streaming, you should see it. And I watched the trailer and I was like, this looks gorgeous, but also it makes me squeamy because I saw the poster. And so I went into this film telling myself, okay, if I feel squeamy, I'm going to turn it off. And I did not turn this film off because I could not look away. It is visually stunning. It is gorgeous. It is about a young housewife who is very controlled and has a husband who does not pay attention to her, even though I would say that she does an excellent job doing her housewifely duties. She feeds him, she cleans, everything, but her life is so controlled because of the role that she feels she has to fulfill to stay in this marriage, which is what supports her. That she looks for other ways to control things in a different way. And so you see her kind of she starts with the marble and things progress from there. The whole film is visually stunning and it has this very kind of like sterile feeling to it, but it also like it doesn't hold back your empathy because there's no way to not empathize with this woman. And then you start to see the lengths that she goes to, but it's like the objects that she has like this little tray on her bedside that has like her little treasures in it, and those are the things that like disappear and then they reappear. But it's just like that's all she has in this entire house that's kind of hers, and you start to empathize with why somebody would have this addiction or go to these lengths of control. And so I just found it incredibly stunning, and something that this is a directorial debut, so I'm very excited to see what else we will get from this director.
Awesome. And had anybody else seen it?
I saw it in January. Yeah, I agree with everything Karissa said. It's amazing. There's a scene far on in the movie of her lazily eating dirt, and
Yeah.
I just
Oh my gosh, I forgot about that. Yeah.
yeah, it's as if she's in front of a TV eating popcorn. She's just kind of popping it into her mouth, and it was such a microcosm of the film. It's beautiful and amazing. I agree with everything Karissa said. Everyone should definitely.
It's an addiction kind of, and there's a scene later. So the family that she's with, they hire somebody to shadow her. She's never allowed to be alone. And there's a certain part where you find the links that she's gone to hide something so that she can access it when she is alone, so that she can keep swallowing. And that just killed me. It killed me. And I was like, this is an addiction. It's just like hiding drugs. It's the same as anything else. It's incredible.
It's very much my partner's cat who has and the lengths that Neji will go to eat things that he shouldn't be eating, like currently the fake Christmas tree. We have to spray it with this whole solution. It's a thing.
Yeah, well, this might give you some empathy into the situation.
It might, but I have to say I don't think so.
I will tell you, do not do a deep dive on her personal life. Because it is super fascinating.
The director? Writer, director?
No, the actress. Actually, don't do a deep dive on Joe Wright's personal life. Because it is messy. She is with Joe Wright, who directed Pride and Prejudice and Atonement and all those movies. And just don't look. Don't look. I'm going to say that right now because it's messy. But I liked this movie a lot more than I expected to.
Yeah, I was surprised. Yeah.
Sometimes these movies can fall short for me, but upon your recommendation, I watched and I enjoyed it. And I think it's mostly because Haley Bennett is incredible in the role.
I was gonna say,
she's
and
stunning.
She also, I feel like, not that she hasn't had already a long career of doing stuff. Like she's got something like 24 movies already under her, but like. I know that she right now is also in like discussion because she's in Hillbilly Elegy, which I haven't seen.
Don't see it.
But I did in the course of rewatching things this year, didn't realize she also plays the young pop star in Music and Lyrics, the rom-com with Hugh Grant and Drew Barrymore. And she's so good in that I was like, oh my god, it's her too. So she's great.
Well, thank you very much, Chris, for that. Kevin, I'm going to turn to you. Your pick of the year.
Nomadland. It is the movie of 2020. It is directed and written by Chloe Zhao. That is how you say her name. Stop saying Zhao, people.
Oh, I keep calling
It,
it Zhao, so thank
it,
you.
yes, I am. You're not the. Listen, Vanity Fair and other like mainstream podcasts call her the like big, like New York Times calls her by the wrong name. And I'm like, guys, all you have to do
And
is Google. Google, it says jaw. Like, come on, Vanity Fair. Let's do
and I'm
this.
just an illiterate Gweilo, so I'm glad
Exactly.
that okay, good. Thank you.
You're welcome. But her first feature film was The Rider, which came out a few years ago, which I think is also a flawless film. And I think what is really great about the work that she does is she incorporates folks who aren't professional actors in her films. And so Frances McDormand is the first professional actress who's been in her movies, whether it be a short or a feature. And still, Frances McDormand, who is a movie star, doesn't overpower it with that quality. And I think what really elucidates why Nomadland is the best film of 2020 for me is there's this soft, warm exploration of what it means to be a human being who is in their 50s, who potentially did not have a financial nest egg to allow them to safely, securely explore their old age or adulthood, whether you're in your 50s or not. And I think what it does is it explores middle America in the most interesting way. And I want middle America to see this movie because I think it really is. I mean, a good bit of it actually takes place in an Amazon um, packing plant type experience where she works in an Amazon factory for a good bit of the movie. And it kind of highlights that folks are taking these jobs, which aren't the best jobs, and really kind of trying to just scout out, trying to get by to live. And I think that's a good bit of what America is doing right now. They're just trying to get by so we can
Yep.
live our everyday lives. And I think that's what Nomadland does. And it's called Nomadland because she obviously is a nomad. She goes from place to place to find job to job to really live in her trailer and be a human being and try and make ends meet, survive, thrive as best as she can. She's really not thriving. She's just literally trying to survive. And even when situations are presented to her where she can kind of potentially get out of that experience, she doesn't know any better. She's not used to anything different. And so she shirks like the comfort of stability in and all of itself for solitude and the isolation of where we're at today. And I think having Frances McDormand in this role really it is one of the strongest performances. Again, another strong performance of the year. I wish she had not have won an Oscar for. I'm sorry, Eric. I know you want to be positive, but this is me being negative about a movie from a couple of years ago. That and
Five
and
signs.
and I'm going to be quite blunt. That fucking piece of shit, Three Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri. If she had not won an Oscar for that, she would have won for this. And I think it's such a subtle and beautiful performance. And you've got David Strathairn, who is not even really in it that much, who's fantastic too, and his son is in it, and you get all these real life folks acting in these like real life situations. And I think that's what makes this movie so prescient. It's so beautiful. The cinematography is breathtaking. And I think if you go into a Chloe Zhao movie, you know that you're going to see one of the most beautifully shot films of the year. And with that said, I'm also kind of excited to see what she does to a Marvel property. Because she has a Marvel property,
Eternals,
like
correct?
Eternals. Yeah, I'm very curious because I think she'll bring added layers of nuance and depth because that's who she is as a filmmaker. And she brings love to her movies.
I will say, well, this is a bit of a digression, sorry, and Matt, we're going to get to you in just a second, but Eternals is definitely one of the Marvel concepts that I think is the least well known for people.
Correct.
It is a C or D level comic property,
Yep.
and I am super excited to see what she in particular does with it, because even just the cast is tremendously diverse. And I can tell you, having gone back and read virtually all of the Eternals comic books, there aren't that many from Marvel. this is a very high concept property that goes way beyond superheroes and is really much more about society and a global society and what it means in the grand kind of space and time. So
Yeah.
this is is a very highfalutin concept, and I would not trust it in the hands of anyone who did not have a very broad yet also very particular sense of what it means to be human. So it
Yeah.
sounds like, based on what you said about this movie, it really seems like someone who got her hand on the pulse of what it means to be alive in 2020. Super
Yeah.
excited to see what she does with that property.
Yeah, I think you'll really enjoy it. And my last sentiment that I would say is she doesn't glorify any of the problems. She actually makes them more relatable. And I think that's the thing that makes Nomadland it makes it excellent.
Great. And where can people watch that?
Nowhere yet.
It will be available. Unfortunately, it will not be available until February. It
Devil.
was, yes, it was. I am sorry. It was streaming on some websites for the last week, although many of the online showings or virtual showings sold out very quickly. I have a feeling, to quote the great RuPaul, I have a feeling they might add some virtual showings throughout the next couple months. I wouldn't be surprised.
Gotcha. Thank you. Thank you, Kevin. Matt, why don't you take us home with your pick for the film of 2020?
Yeah, my favorite film actually ended up being Driveways, which is a small indie film that was released into both VOD and the virtual cinema program, that where distributors combined their revenue to help art house theaters. And it came out in the spring, and it is a film that's very, very quiet, but in like a really humane and relatable and beautiful way. It is about an 8-year-old boy who accompanies his mother to clean out a family member's house. The family member has passed away, and so they spend the summer cleaning out this house. He has a really hard time relating to the neighborhood kids, but then he ends up forming an unexpected friendship with the grouchy old man who lives next door. If this sounds kind of like an indie that you might have already expected to have seen in like the late 90s, you're not wrong in that the plot very much has that kind of a feel to it. It has a real sweetness and a softness to it. But it is directed so exquisitely by Andrew Ahn, who is an out gay director. And the cast in it is fantastic. Hong Chow is the lead actress in it, and she is amazing. People might originally know her as she got some award buzz when she was in Downsizing, but more recently she was in Homecoming, the television series,
Oh,
and she's
Yeah.
also in Watchmen as the head of that, crazy organization.
yeah.
Which crazy organization?
I don't remember the name of it now, but the one that has the giant clock, and she
Oh
is,
my god, I loved her. Yes, she
yes,
was incredible in
yes,
Watchmen. I
yes,
thought that's who you were talking about. I love her.
She's so good in Driveways.
yes. Yeah, she's amazing in it. And then Brian Dennehy, who's made a incredible career overplaying like little character parts, um, is the man next door. This was his final performance. Um, and Lucas J, who's the kid, is also a young child actor, is fantastic. It just Driveways has a sensitive, beautiful, natural ease to it. It's sweet without being sappy, and it's set in present day, but if you replace like the tablet for like a Game Boy, it easily could be set, in any like modern era. It's about relating to other people, and it's about a brief moment of growing up for both adults and kids. And it is it's feel good without being overly saccharine, and I think it's a beautiful, beautiful little film.
Yeah, I watched it because I saw it was on Matt's list and I was like, "Oh, I want to see some more films." And I was able to rent it on Fandango for like $4. I don't think that's currently available. I don't know how I swung that deal. Um, but I saw it described as a film about kindness, And that kind of is what it is. And it's just everything about it. It's quiet and it's lovely. And those three characters, the boy, his mom, and then the neighbor, like each of them are so distinct and played so well. And they just, everything comes together in such a way that is just so wonderful. And it's such a lovely thing to take in.
And it's like, I haven't seen this movie, but I do think it's worth pointing out that if there was kind of a yearning in 2020, it's about connection. And it sounds like what
Yeah.
you're talking about is this is a film about connecting with other people, which we are incapable of doing physically right now.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
People who are different from yourself, people who are different ages, different races, different backgrounds. Like this takes place in Michigan, and I forget where they travel from to clean out this house, but it's not there. You know, it's a trip. So they are out of their element. They are not white, you know. So yeah, there's a lot of levels of relating to people on a people level.
And I think politically, geographically, socially, connection seems really difficult right now. So I can see why that would really resonate with a lot of audiences. So fantastic. Well, thank you, Matt. That sounds like a great one that we'll have to check out. And right now it's not available for streaming that you're aware of?
It is
It's on
actually.
Showtime. It's on Showtime.
It's as to say, it's actually because of it coming out earlier this year. At this point now, it's on all major streaming platforms. Well, for rental, like it's on Amazon and YouTube and yada yada yada. So,
And if you have Showtime, there you go. Free. It's for free.
For free. That's my best. That's the best.
Oh yeah,
$3.99.
yeah. It's a $3 rental on a lot of places. So yeah, go check it out. It's really good.
Thank you. Well, there you have it, folks. Those are our picks. Did you watch any of them? Do you have your own opinions? Is there something else that we missed? This episode is just the beginning of the discussion, so let us know your favorites on social media and at greatpopculturedebate.com. And you better buckle up because the Great Pop Culture Debate has plenty more in store for 2021. Come right back to greatpopculturedebate.com after the new year as the polls for season 3 will be opening up for your votes. We're talking Best Movie Musical, Best One-Hit Wonder, Best Ben & Jerry's Flavor, and Best Muppet, just to name a few. Make sure you're subscribed to the podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or Audible, and that you follow us on all of our social media platforms so you can get the latest news and episodes. And if you haven't supported us on Patreon or Pod Hero yet, what are you waiting for? There are so many great perks, and we'd love to have you as part of our little podcast family. I want to thank all of my panelists for all of their hard work on this. Thank you for listening this year, and let's look forward to a bigger and hopefully brighter 2021. Thanks so much.